We'll sit down the whole show talking to that person.
That'll be good.
Hey guys, welcome to the Roundtable. I'm Amir.
I'm Brian.
I'm Jason.
I'm Allison.
And this week we're talking about video games and
Really?
whether they could be considered...
What? Duet now? Duet? Duet now?
Well, I know.
I've been away from for a week, so I don't know if we changed like formats completely.
I thought we were doing Magic the Gathering now.
Yeah, see, I had no idea.
I really wish I could just whip out like cards.
Yu-Gi-Oh cards.
Because, yeah, I was thinking Colossus of Sardia. Sure, I talk about that.
What
sure.
the fuck is that?
Yeah, never mind. No, don't bother. No. Keep going.
All right, yeah. So
Awesome.
This week we're talking about video games and whether they should be classified as toys or they could be an art form. That's an ongoing debate for quite some time.
That's a big topic.
Big topic.
Big.
Yeah. And right before we rolled, I said, I don't even know if we could do this in an hour. And so I don't know. We're going to try.
We're going to try.
It's both. It's both.
But
Discussion over.
But I
That's it.
I had a debate with a friend, and he said the same thing. And at first, I kind of agreed. I said, okay, it could be a toy and an art form. I've shifted away from that. I don't think that there is a video game that isn't art.
Mm-hmm.
And that's the difficult thing is what is art, right? That's the major question.
Yep.
It's
Naughty
difficult
bear.
to define, but to me, it's any work that's created for the sole purpose of invoking an emotion.
Well, it's more than that. This is my own personal view.
No, well, yeah.
There is
there.
I get very aggravated. I'm an amateur artist. I draw, I do miniatures. I enjoy it though. There was an episode.
And you're awesome at it, by the way.
Oh, thank you. There is an episode. I don't know if any of you ever watched it. I know I got Allison into it. Have you ever watched Top Gear from UK?
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
There's an episode in which they do this whole art gallery thing.
Yep.
Okay.
And there's this part where they bring in an art critic, and they're actually looking at real pieces of art that people have done about either racing or something of that sort. And everything they're asking him is this art. And some of it is really gorgeous. He says no. It's like, in my opinion, is if the artist was putting his soul or just something that he felt into it or some form of an expression, it's art to him. Just because you're a critic and you think you know what your art is means, truthfully, whenever you say that, means I don't trust you at all. Because most critics are usually not all of them. Some of them are very good at what they do and are very, I don't know, but they can critique things, especially if they've experienced it and done it themselves. But a lot of that I've seen, or also be it movies, art, music, what have you, a lot of them are just very full of themselves, in my opinion. Mm-hmm. And it just aggravates the hell out of me.
Yeah.
Because I don't think it's right for someone to say, I'm not an artist, but your stuff is an art. I don't agree with it.
Right, and I think that's a problem is that some people label art as a certain quality, and I think it's the exact opposite. I think what makes art is invoking the emotion, having something to express, having an emotion to express, invoking that emotion and somebody else getting that emotion out of them. But really, in order to do that, you have to kind of embrace your inabilities to do certain things, and where those imperfections start to show up in your product, that's what makes it unique and that's what makes it attractive. And of course, I'm coming from the musician songwriter standpoint, where it's like I can't do this awesome lead solo, but I don't have to, because I'm not trying to show off how I could play a guitar. I'm trying to tell you how I feel, and if you feel the same way, then we connect on that level that surpasses my ability to just talk about it. And I think that's what video games do, where when you are in there, you're actually interacting with an art form, and there's a certain emotion that I feel a programmer or anybody there will want to get out of you. And it could be something as simple as, we just want to make you smile, And it could be something really deep as, I want to make you look at this character, Metal Gear Solid 1, Sniper Wolf barely has a face, Solid Snake barely has a face, but I play it with 2 friends sitting on my bed across my TV, and all of us are crying. Well, how... That's what makes it so incredible. You got all of this emotion out of me. You made me so sad for this person that is not real. So not real that they don't even have a face. I can't even see tears. I can't, all I have is a voice and a discussion, and you've brought all of this emotion out of me. And so for that, I would say video games are definitely an art form and a method of expression.
The definition of evoke an emotion is problematic because I don't know that trolling is an art form. I suppose it could be considered, but I mean it's easy to evoke emotions.
Yes,
right. Because I mean you can evoke emotions from people with things that are not quite. I mean you can go ahead and get a brown bag, paper bag. Put some feces in it, light it on fire, knock on somebody's door, and you're going to evoke some emotions. It doesn't mean that it's art form on their door, but...
Only if you
you don't know.
videotape it.
To you doing
Thank
it,
you.
it is a form of art.
Because I know that was a joke, but that realistically, to me, that is art. If I took a bag of shit and I lit it on fire in front of your doorstep, and now I'm videotaping it...
Yeah.
That is now I'm trying to express something. I am sharing that expression with somebody else.
Okay.
With a multitude of people, not just that one person who I lit the bag of shit on fire.
Right.
But to me that is
So it's that layer, that's that abstraction layer. We're putting a frame around a story. Yeah.
If you're just doing it and it's just between you and the other person and the why is just to piss them off, that's just an interaction between 2 people. But to me, if it's a form of expression, it's like, this is what happens if you light a bag of shit on fire. In front of a person.
You can do a whole photo gallery.
This is why
and
I
just do
did
it
it.
with
This is
multiple
why I
people.
wanted. This is why I did it, and this is why I wanted to show it to you.
So the story. It needs a story.
Maybe it needs a narrative.
It needs a narrative.
It does need a narrative.
It
needs
doesn't
a
even
narrative.
necessarily have that art. It doesn't really fun. We'll look at like just modern art. A lot of it's just abstract images. I personally don't really care for abstract art, but do I think it's an art form? Yes, it is a form of art.
I don't understand it.
No,
Yeah,
I don't
yeah.
understand it
Yeah.
either because of just random splotches or just random weird designs of a statue or something like that. And that's cool. I mean, that's what they like to do, and that's how they express themselves. So, yes, it is an art form. I don't care for it, but it is one.
Now, perfect timing for this. Last night, my wife and I wanted to hang out. We were in the living room, and she did the usual thing. She fell asleep on my lap while we were watching TV. And so now in my head, it was like, I just want to go downstairs now and play video games. She's just laying here. I don't want to watch this wrestling show. I just want to go downstairs and play video games. Well, I couldn't. She was laying there. I was kind of in the moment, too. I really wanted to be with her. I missed her after the busy weekend. So I just kind of browsed around my Roku, and I saw Netflix. I clicked on Netflix, and I see Video Games, the movie. So
We just watched that.
So I just watched it last night, and I watched it in its entirety, and I got to just hang out with the wife a little bit. And a lot of the things in there I felt like totally suited us here. And really simple thing, they classified Nintendo as a toy maker. So what makes let's take that, because I have this Skyrim art book. I mean, it's called an art book, right? So it's got to be art. Okay, and this is just one. This is just one aspect of a video game, right? It's just the visuals, and this is just visual art. I mean, there's also musical assets. There's all kinds of stuff. But we classify Nintendo as a toy maker because what do they have? They have a plumber that jumps up and hits things, lands on stuff. Maybe it's just a toy. Maybe it's just a video toy. They classify Nintendo as a toy maker. At what point? And if you think if it was at any point, I still see a Nintendo game. I'm sorry, I'm fumbling with my words. I'm trying to figure out how to express this, but Super Mario Brothers to me is still art. They classified it in the movie, in the film or the documentary, as being a toy. That Nintendo was a toy maker. Do you guys feel that Super Mario Brothers was a toy? Anybody step in? Do you feel that Super Mario Brothers was a toy? And if so, at what point did video games become art?
Well, to me, I was thinking about this the other day, too, and I always thought that a toy is usually meant to teach you something. Little girls have baby dolls, It's not really teaching you to take care of a baby, but you get the basics down. And usually toys like Legos, you know, architecture, you're learning how to put things together. You learn how to put the round block in the round hole. And that's what I always felt about video games, too, is like, you know, it teaches you the eye-hand coordination, you know, cause and effect. And when I got into playing, like, the Final Fantasy and stuff like that, it taught me, you know, new vocabulary words, like what's this? And I thought the video games was always teaching you something, too. And that's what we usually want out of toys. When you give a kid a toy, you kind of want them to learn something, use their imagination. I never took the time to actually look up what the dictionary definition of toy is, but I would think that something along those lines should be in there. I mean,
to me, toy is just something that distracts a kid so that you can just go on with your day.
well, you hope they're learning something in the process.
But also, if you view it as the other thing, a toy can be something in which a child uses their imagination to and be more creative with their life. I mean, fuck. I mean, how many decades ago was a stick or, you know, whatever was classified as a toy? But to a child, it's a sword, it's a staff, it's something to go on an adventure with. It's a tool, is a better word for it.
Well, okay, that's actually good. Okay, so let's go with that. There's a sword. Let's go into the physical realm, I guess, the physical toy. This stick that has no detail to it whatsoever is a sword toy. But you could buy a sword replica for far more money that is far more detailed, and we'll call that a work of art. So I guess that in some areas maybe we classify certain things by the quality, whether they're art or not, like how much attention to detail maybe.
Or the quantity. We were talking about limited prints and things, limited edition.
Well, I'm sorry, Gary.
Well,
I didn't mean to interrupt.
to go back to your reference to Top Gear, I mean, one of the criticisms of having automobiles being art is that they're mass produced. So if you can, if you can mass produce it, you know, even with art, we have prints, but then we have that original, and it's kind of like this original sort of spawned all of these. And in music, we have covers of songs, but we have that original. Right. So the artistic value of those secondary forms is in some cases considered diminished, or in the case of automobiles, some people discount it completely, saying that it's not because it can be just manufactured, and that the individuality, I suppose, that one would that we have partially used to define art tonight is lost because of that mass manufactured aspect. So a replica sword, some would argue, is not an art, is not a piece of art, but a one of a kind, handmade that would more easily be, you know, that's very intrinsically might be considered art.
But then you go on the flip side, though. A lot of artists will usually do something that's a very common item nowadays and use it as some form of a modern art. Like someone might take 100,000 like physical copies of yen, you know, and not the coin form, but like I guess like kind of like how our dollars are, and just frame it and throw it in a gallery. This is art.
Yeah,
and this is a common item, but then it is because of the way it's done.
Well, still life, you know, bowl of fruit.
You know, and I don't know. Maybe in my opinion, I just think, really honestly, if you're creating something, it doesn't matter what it is. If you're creating something, it's a piece of art. It could be a car. It could be anything being engineered. It could be computer hardware, computer software, art designs, sound designs, anything. As long as it's you're creating it or you're using your imagination and your creativity, that's art.
Wow, this is an awesome flashback, and I was having it while you guys were talking, so I'll share a little bit with you. When I was 14 years old and I started a band, I got my break as a first gig. There was a restaurant owner. He opened up a nightclub upstairs. He knew who my mom and dad were, and he said, I would love if, you know, you do your band thing, we'll bring a newspaper. We want to see what's, you know, because that will help promote my club. And I was like, okay, whatever. My parents really aren't that special to me. They were famous in Israel, so it was a total different, like, cultural thing. I wanted to be like the young rock star at 14. I put a band together. We totally sucked, but, you know, we did the show. But I did have important things to discuss because I was like, what you'd call emo now. I was a really disturbed 14-year-old kid that had a lot of problems and needed to express them. And that's how I became a vocalist and guitarist.
So you were a standard teenager?
Pretty
Yeah,
much.
pretty much.
Yeah.
We won't go into that, but
That's
yeah.
for another time.
Ever since that Punch Out episode, he just wasn't the same.
Yeah, definitely not. But so before the gig, there was another band that was supposed to open up for us.
Wow, you had an opening act?
Yeah, and
Wow.
the opening act
For your first gig, that's impressive.
the opening act lead singer was in his 40s.
Mm-hmm.
And we had sat to eat in the restaurant downstairs, and he found out that who I was, and we just sat down. And we started to just chat, whatever. And to him, it was just he's just talking to this kid, trying to figure out whatever. But when we got into the conversation about music, I said there was a difference between a musician and an artist. And to this day, me and him say that those were the key words that solidified our relationship as two artists. Now, even at 14 years old, and this is not to pat myself on the back because I was bad, but as bad as I was, this guy was way worse. Okay? He was horrible. But when we jammed together, it was like he made me 10 times better. And we say that that's down to the art, down to the emotion that you share together, maybe in a jam, or the emotion that you share with the public, like when you play a song and you really have something important to say, and you kind of want them to understand, so you create this whole soundscape so that they can understand the emotion that you feel. And I actually got to the point where I was writing songs where the lyrics were the opposite of how I felt, but I could still convey the emotion, so I could actually lie while singing, and the listener would know by the end of the song that I was lying the entire time, and that was the emotion, and I was trying to convey that I was lying. And they got it, and it made me feel great when people would connect on that level, and I would know that the soundscape was there. And the reason that we said that there was a difference between a musician and an artist is that a musician will learn how to sight read. They get paid lots of money, and the more rare the instrument, the more you get paid. And they could sight read, and whatever you tell them to play, they'll play it, and they'll play it to perfection. It's perfect. They'll be able to get what you would think a 2-hour session is required for. They'll get it done in 30 minutes and zoom right out to the next studio and do their thing. As an artist, I'm much more meticulous. I have written a song. I know exactly how that song's supposed to go, but it's in production for a year because I want to make sure that every little thing in there is conveyed properly. And eventually when I moved on from him and from our mentoring of each other, really, towards the end, I moved on to record an album with somebody completely different, which took me 5 years and a mountain climb. We'll discuss the mountain climb another time.
Okay.
But to me, that's why I say that art to me is about evoking that emotion. That's not it. Of course, art is multifaceted, right? It's not the one thing.
Right.
That's why it's so hard to define.
Right.
But to me, it's being able to share that emotion with somebody else. We talked about and made fun of me for the fact that I could play Skyrim and I could walk from city to city. And the reason that I can walk from city to city is because I connect with the designers, like all the people who put all these art assets that I know that if I run, I'll go straight from, a semi-warm climate in Skyrim. Once I hit a mountain, all of a sudden there's a blizzard and it's high winds. But if I walk it slowly, I can hear the gust, and therefore I could feel that my character is a little bit colder than he was before and that maybe a storm is coming. And then I'll see a few flakes and then it'll start snowing, and that to me, I could tell that there were people there that were like, no, from this point to this point, this is how intense it gets. From this point to this point, this is how the weather pattern is going to work because we want them to feel like they're going through this weather pattern. And because they were that meticulous, to me, that's art. Because they wanted me to feel that, and I felt it. But back to that question, Super Mario. Super Mario Brothers on Nintendo Entertainment System. Do you view it as a toy or art? Actually, let's go around the table with that, because we'll probably have to go around the table a couple times.
Okay.
Super Mario Brothers, the original, toy or art?
It was a toy.
Okay.
Became art.
I do agree because it was originally created to really launch the system. I mean, it wasn't really. They created it to just really propel the sales.
Mm-hmm.
Now, looking back, it's viewed as an art form because of the nostalgia factor and everything. But I think at the time, it was just viewed as it was a toy.
Mm-hmm.
And I do believe, yes, became elevated to the point towards art form. I mean, hell, look at all the deviant art and stuff like that people do of just the first one, not including the newer ones and stuff like that.
What do you think? Toy or art? Nothing.
I agree with Brian that it started off as a toy, like what they've been saying too, because that's what it was meant to, was just to propel sales and such. And I think a lot of it in the beginning, like that, it was just kind of toys, and so we started to add real stories and actually focus on what the music would sound like and how the story would go and how the decisions were made and how this character came across, and
Okay.
that's not the other.
So if we say that it started as a toy and ended it up as art,
Mm-hmm.
at what point does a video game become art then? And just to weigh in, to me, Super Mario Brothers, even when it was originally created, while the intention was for it to be a toy, I think it was rooted in, I think it had artistic merit.
Oh, yeah.
And I think it was definitely a work of art with the intention of pleasing
Yeah.
children.
Yeah.
But I think it was a work of art from the get-go.
Well, I mean, we're talking about semantic difference.
But
at that point,
but at what point does
was it recognized?
no? At what point would you say that a video game becomes art? Because Super Mario Brothers originally is simple and it's just there to play, right? It's just there as a toy for a kid to play with. At what point do you think a video game transitions? What elements in a video game transitions it from being a toy to being an art form?
Here's my question. Me personally, I view toys, on vast majority of them, if not all of them, in a way, are a form of art. Because I mean, it's just really in your own opinion. Some people think it's a juvenile thing to sink.
It's a very difficult thing to classify.
While others view it as different things. I mean, hell, like look, Legos. Some people build them like as models and just keep them on their table, or
give you
like
an example here.
And board games too.
board games, video games, action figures.
Oh yeah.
I mean, hell, look at anything done by Todd McFarlane. I remember when those were first coming out, and I remember people buying them, not opening the package. And there's a difference between collectible, but even just viewing it as a piece of art because of the vast amount of detail that they enjoyed.
Yep.
I love
It's me. It's a Mario. Okay, so I bought this Mario at GameStop. I bought him for $35. And there's a reason I bring these two, because they're both the same price. They were both $35. Okay? So, now, this Mario, the only reason he's here is because, the only reason I purchased him, is because I moved into this new house and I was looking for reasons to fill these new shelves. And I said, I want it, now that I have a man cave, I want to fill up these shelves with things. And for nostalgic reasons, I grew up with Super Mario. It was my favorite generation in games, so I said, I want to put Mario on my shelf. And when I went to GameStop to pre-order a game, I saw him. I said, give me that dude. And then I looked at him more closely, and I said, man, you could see, like, the paint running off. You know, like, there's gaps between his hands. And, I mean, there's seams. This is, to me, a toy. This is made specifically for kids that go, that's a big fucking Mario. They probably won't say fucking without getting slapped.
Probably
But,
not.
you know, that's a big Mario, mommy. I want that Mario because I want to play him and I could position him in different ways. Okay, cool. Toy. Now, it's difficult for you guys to see. I'll walk up to the camera in a minute, about just to iterate my point. Now, this was $35, and I had to hunt this down. Scarcity, which was something that you mentioned.
Yeah.
I had to hunt this down on eBay and finally found it. And it's Solid Snake from Metal Gear Solid 2. And this, if you guys look at it really closely, is incredibly detailed, down to the little buckles on his vest. His positioning, this iconic position, which was in the first Metal Gear, some of the box art. This is definitely art. And to me, the reason that this is art is because the intention was to be meticulous, to point out every little thing that's going on here. The flexing of the muscles, because he's in this position, everything was well thought out. Somebody put their love and time into creating this in order to evoke that emotion from you. And to me, that's what makes this art. This might remind me of a time where I played Super Mario, but this Mario doesn't make me really feel anything. This makes me really look at it and appreciate the effort that went into making it, and the actual memory of playing as Solid Snake is secondary to how much time and love was put into this, and for me to actually appreciate this before what it represents. And to me, that's the difference. Let me bring this into the camera so people can see the detail see you take over and see what you think.
Yeah. Well, yeah, definitely personal taste. And then, but you know, time and love and effort is, you know, if that were 3D printed, would you have the same?
No, 3D printing's not to that point yet.
Well, no, I know, but you know, if that were just manufactured, like if it's hand painted, I think that makes a difference in how artistic it is.
Yes.
See, I disagree though, because I still do view this as a piece of art.
Okay. Why?
Because even though it brings back that memory, even you have it put up on.
We're
your
talking
shelf.
about you, Mario, so you get to be on the table.
You have it up on your shelf.
Right.
It's a form of a collectible.
Yes.
But in my opinion, it's still something that was crafted. It was something that was designed, and someone did put some form of at least a love or a desire to create something to it. So this is a form of art, in my opinion.
Okay.
But once again, though, I view anything that was a form of a creation, or someone wanted to design something, or just a form of creation.
And now this
That's
is
a form of art.
Okay, and then now this plays into why I define it differently. I was talking about embracing your limitations. At the time that this Mario was created, which was recently, a lot more could have been done to make this Mario look more detailed. If even the slightest effort was made to not just cash in on Mario's popularity, more detail would go into making this, and it would be sold for more. It wasn't that they were limited in their ability to make this, because this is an actual official Nintendo product. So it wasn't that they didn't have the ability to make something more detailed. They chose not to. They chose to just make this and just spit it out for kids to buy. Embracing your limitations is, and this is how we go back to the 8-bit Super Mario, the original. It's the embracing of the limitations and doing the most you can with those. They only had 8 bits to work with. There was a limited color palette. There was limited memory in those consoles. And so, to me, Super Mario Brothers is art because it took those limitations and did the best it could with it, and took video games to the next level. Metal Gear, my love for Metal Gear doesn't stem from Metal Gear Solid. My love for Metal Gear stems from the first Metal Gear on Nintendo. Most people will talk about Metal Gear Solid as if it's the first entry in the franchise, but it's not. The story began in 1987, and that was on Nintendo. And the reason that I love that original Nintendo one is, if you know Hideo Kojima's story in developing Metal Gear, is that they kind of threw it on his lap. He was a failing developer. He had a bunch of less than mediocre releases. Konami was definitely not happy with him, but they wanted a military game. And so they told him, make us a military game. And Hideo Kojima admits in a couple of his interviews that at the time, there was really no way for him to make an army game because he couldn't fit enough on screen. And so what he decided to do was instead to create this line of sight mechanic and make the game more about getting around the enemy so that you only had 3 enemies on a screen, and that was the reason. It was like you can't confront them because they'll kill you. And the way he set that up was that if you went into the next screen, then all the memory can just be washed away, and then he could have another design on screen. And that embracing of those limitations and being able to tell this full story on this little 8-bit console with this, with this limited color palette. And he definitely pulled it off. And that was one of I still remember when at that age where I went into the store and I kept going up to like sales clerks and saying, I want something like Metal Gear. And there's nothing like Metal Gear. That's art. And that's why anything Hideo Kojima today, for me as an adult, when I hear Hideo Kojima, I go, well, what is he going to do with his limitations today? Where he could do anything he wants, but he's still going to take it to the absolute cap and then say, okay, this is the limit. What can I do to push it just a little bit further? To me, that's art.
I think that you've hit on something there. Perhaps utilizing the medium to its fullest potential at the time, because if you think about, if we consider the Best Picture at the Academy Awards a piece of art, that is a consideration of what is the ultimate in filmmaking for that period of time, right? Let's just get the best or the best performance, right? And that's what we refer to as artistic, right? Is that you're taking a role or a form, and you are exercising all of the capabilities of that to its fullest, at least as it's conceived amongst the people that are going to view it, really.
Yeah.
And this is where we get into the shifting palette of what is art and how there's so many stories of, and one of the reasons why I say, that Mario started as a toy is because, most of the time if you achieve that, it's not recognized immediately because the conception of what is closer to that ultimate can completely contradict what it is that has been produced. So especially if you take something like, to stay in video games as it were, if you take arguably a masterpiece of gaming, the original Legend of Zelda, and then you compare it to Zelda 2. For a lot of people, Zelda 2 is a horrible mess, and Zelda 1 is a work of art. But for other people, especially over time, Zelda 2 has become just as much about the way that you interact in the game and the progression. It was just in a different way than people connected to it before, and so it wasn't immediately recognized. Same thing with cult classics, as we refer to them. Where they're not Best Picture, right? But then, the next year or 5 years or 10 years later, people are just like, "Holy crap! What is this?
Yeah,
this is fantastic. How did I miss this?"
Yes, I get that a lot.
Yeah.
I have that emotion a lot. But I don't, for me, it's not necessarily the quality that you output. It's your ability, the individual's ability to do the most with what they can, with their limitations. Because I don't think anybody is really perfect. So, to me, I don't know if really you could gauge art as a quality type.
But you did with Mario.
No. I'm talking about dedication and wanting to do art. So to explain, this quality is low, but that's not what makes it not art. It's the fact that it's low quality when they were capable and able to do a lot more.
Well, who was capable?
Whoever manufactured this. This is just made by a toy company. It's an official Nintendo product, and we've seen a lot more detailed products come out of them. If you had a whole bunch of top-notch artists working on this Mario, this is not the Mario you would get.
So the quality. That's what I'm coming back to, is because
They
what
didn't
they
take
would do
somebody
is
who was
improve the
incapable,
quality.
who was not capable of doing better. They took a professional and said, make me a cheap, big Mario to sell.
And that's what they did.
And that's what they did. They made a cheap, big Mario.
That was their limitation, is that it couldn't cost a whole lot. So working within that limitation of the materials that were available to them, that's what they produced. So by that criteria, that's the only thing is, because it does, to a certain degree.
Well, how
then,
is this created? It's not designed, is it?
It depends on their creative process.
Yeah,
It could have been done by a sculptor.
Yeah.
And then they
They
took a mold.
do that a lot. Like they have one original that's
I guess I would
fully
have to learn-
detailed, and then they make a copy.
Okay, then I guess I would have to learn more about how this Mario.
Well, and you can
came
even
to
go
be.
back to the original design
for
of
knocking
Mario as being art, and
Yeah.
then that's just a copy.
Right.
Yeah, but as far as, is that the pinnacle of 30-inch figures? No, it isn't.
Right.
And so, and then I guess that's more the angle, is just like within a category, within a medium, whatever that is, a block of plastic. Use this block of plastic to make something. And you have these tools to make something out of that.
Or even those can typically come across as just a 3D model somebody makes on a computer
Yeah.
that is then printed like that, which it takes very long and very meticulous. And
And
Are
the
you-
concept of
Usually
designing it is still a
painful.
form of, even though this is a design that has been laid in stone, this is what he looks like for how many decades. But still, you have to create that design.
Yeah.
And there's always the chance of that person that designed it might have put their one little small tweak into it. That was their design.
Right. And
Well-
that's what this is missing. That's what this does not.
No, that's
have.
what I'm saying. It might actually, you just might not notice it. Sometimes
Yeah.
it's so minute, you might not notice it at all. But still, that they were able to design it, and they were the ones that said, I was the creator of this. I was the one that designed this one, even though this is 30 inches compared to this 12-inch one that's out here. I'm the one that helped design this, and I feel pride over this.
Right, but it's not an individual that designed that. That's manufactured.
No, but how much more is the snake individually designed? And that's the thing. So do we
Very
have?
much so. This has to have an artist involved. You can't get this kind of detail without being very meticulous. And then after all of that effort to be that meticulous, that's when you manufacture.
Okay. So is this?
There's no care to detail here.
Okay.
There is no detail in this Mario.
how
at
much
all.
extra detail can you put in?
It's actually so bad that if this was in a coloring book, you would assume that an 8-year-old colored it in because it actually bleeds off its edges.
Mhm.
There's no attention.
It's its imperfections that make it unique.
Yeah, if
Right,
it,
and that could
if it was
even-
hand painted, yes.
Right.
But I will go against you because, see, here's the other thing, too, because I'm back in a lot of my time spending in board gaming and wargaming and stuff like, there were plenty of games that were out there, miniature games that were always prescribed that they were hand painted. And yeah, they were hand painted, but you could tell that they just slapped paint on it and threw it out. Just because it's hand painted doesn't necessarily mean it was well taken care of and not just thrown out the door as fast as possible.
Yeah.
These do have a lot of detail on them. These are very good looking, like figures or custom. Well, hell, look at like what I brought up earlier, Todd McFarlane's brand. Those are manufactured. They are just as many thousands that they make, and most of them are a form of hand painted. And those are, in my opinion, works of art. But just because it's hand painted does not discredit something else that is probably not hand painted is not a work of art.
You know,
Because this
Which you
is
could
just-
come back to the car issue
Yep.
with that too, as the being mass produced. Does that make it any less of an art piece than? Which I'm sure there was a lot put into that by just a handful of people to begin with to come up with the design of the car to begin with. But
right, you do get. You have to have somebody design it. You have to have somebody put the template together, put the plan together to actually build it and make it work. And in my mind, I can't help but think that perhaps there's kind of that everything is to a certain degree a work of art, but it's on a sliding scale. Like some things are more artistic than others. Some things are more
Some
deserving
things
of a
have more
work of art.
artistic merit than others.
And it's all in how you perceive it, and it's all how
Yeah.
a person's viewpoints is towards that.
Right.
I was caressing this box before, not because I was in love with this pizza.
You got to try it. It's going to be artistic. How you're going to
I don't
open
know,
this up
man.
without knocking all this off?
I don't
It's
know.
gonna
Oh,
be
no,
pretty
I'm
cool.
not even going to open up. But okay, so this is our Little Caesars pizza. It's because I'm a cheap bastard, and so when I feed all of us, I go and I get a hot and ready for $5.
Why does that make you a cheap bastard?
Okay, because it's cheap. I could get much more expensive pizza, but fuck that. I'm cheap. So here's a cheap pizza. Now I'm from Brooklyn, and on Avenue J in Brooklyn, in Midwood, there's this old man who has a pizzeria, and he has lines out the door. The thing is that every single pizza that you order from him is a one of a kind, because he runs this pizza shop, as popular as he is, and he makes his own cheese and gets his herbs from his yard and could feed that many people in
Wow.
Brooklyn, New York. Okay? To the point where, and he's an older man, that he needs an hour break during the day to just rest because he can't just keep serving and
blame
making
him.
pizzas. Now, me and Jess heard about him. I heard about him for years, and I wanted to go and try that pizza. I went on Yelp, and I saw like these ridiculous reviews, like best pizza in New York, best pizza in the country. Zagat agreed too. Everybody says that this is the best pizza you can get. So me and Jess said, okay, we'll wait online and we'll get a pizza. And we were lucky one day where we saw that the line was a little bit shorter, so we only had to wait 45 minutes that night. So we said, okay, we'll wait and we'll get this pizza. And it sucked. It was horrible. But the fact of the matter is that if we're going to compare this manufactured pizza that's made all day long, just spit them out, that tastes better. The effort that he puts into it, the love that he puts into it, the fact that he had something to express, even in a pizza, that you appreciate it that much more, that you're willing to pay 3 or 4 times more just to have this old man give you those fresh ingredients and see what he came up with for you, because that's your pizza.
Yeah.
To me, that is art. If you have something to express, you have something to convey, and you're looking for a specific kind of receipt, and that would be emotion. And you could see it on his face. When somebody gets a pizza, those few people that could sit in his restaurant, have the pizza, and they turn to him, and they shake his hand, and they say, this is the best pizza. And I wish I had that reaction, because mine was bad. But they go up to him, and they shake his hand, and they're like, this is the best pizza I've ever had. And you could see him glow, and it's almost like tradition that everybody in this pizzeria does that.
Did you do it?
I didn't, because mine was the worst I ever had. So
Did you tell him that?
No. I didn't want to shake his hand.
No, I guess you wouldn't do that in New York, right? That would be kind of a bad.
No, I'd
idea.
probably get shot.
Yeah.
No, but I don't know. So I am totally enamored with video games, more so than for just sitting there and playing them and having a good time. I'm more enamored with video games for the artwork that goes into them. I'm very much into the whole Dev Diary thing, seeing all these hundreds of artists work on a concept piece and then eventually see it progress and shift hands. As a musician, just listening to a soundtrack of an album, especially now that we have music and video games that kind of go with the action and they swell, and I could recognize these extra layers as saying, wow, that takes a lot for you to not just write a song, but write it on such a scale where it can swell and it can shrink depending on the action, and be able to tell a programmer, this is where you're going to cue this mix, and this is where you're going to cue this mix for every time this or this happens. And I've seen kind of a bit of the process, and just in the music portion, it's just so sophisticated and so awesome. But to then, move it, shift it over and then see the visual art, see the transition of the visual art, to see the programmers doing their code, people, doing if-then statements before they go into programming AI code, trying to cover all the bases, and then at the same time create the illusion of freedom for the player. I mean, you're really interacting with like a freaking. It's like having 100 Picassos, working on this one little project for just a couple of years, just to hear that you've enjoyed it, or that you learned something from it, or that you felt something from it, and that's all they want to get back. And once it sells well enough, we hear it all the time. Like that's what they're so happy about, right?
Mm-hmm.
It sells well enough, people receive it well, and the developers are just so happy that they're willing to go and do it again. It's kind of Hideo Kojima's disease. You know, people are just so freaking happy with his product that he just can't stop as many times as he keeps trying to retire. It just keeps coming up, and it's just like, okay, I'll do another one, because it's that electricity, that communication that's beyond words is there, and I think games have gotten to that point. Even more so than film, because film really is just a narrative, right? It's a narrative. It's the performance.
Not if you're Michael Bay.
It's a narrative. I mean,
It's
it's
all
a special effects, but it's
explosions.
very. And that was the thing that I loved about video games, the movie, the documentary, where I wish I wrote that in a statement. And I knew last night when I heard it, I was like, you should write this down, because that was a freaking great sentence. But it was basically about, you go into a film and you have this passive experience. Watching this film, and they get to tell you a story, and that's great. And by the end of it, you got that story. But when you play a video game, they're telling you a story, but you feel like you're helping them tell it. You feel like you don't just feel like that you're part of it. You feel like you're part of writing that story for your character and whatever you're doing. And that's kind of like that extra dimension that we needed to really communicate between the artist and no longer the observer, but now the companion to the artist.
This is off topic, kind of, in a way, but you talking about that has made me or reminded me of something. This is just more of a question I have for you. Please, you have seen Lord of the Rings, right?
Yeah.
Have you?
And any of the Hobbit movies, but
They're all right.
the original trilogy.
Have you ever actually watched the making of any of them?
Yeah, I did. Only once. I don't have a lot of it committed to memory.
Well, I think not really the making of, but if you can watch, because I have I've always enjoyed fantasy style and sci-fi, but I've always, that's because I have a close part of it that I always enjoyed it, so I always enamored by it. But I think you personally should just at least watch this one part of it that was on the extended cut or the Fellowship. Watch the Weta Workshop stuff.
The what workshop?
Weta Workshop. That's the people that.
WETA.
There's the people that actually did the computer stuff, but not only that, they also did all the creation of the clothes, the designs, everything. You really need to watch that. There's so much meticulous design that's never even seen on camera. That's put into the armor, the swords, that people, even if you read the books and know about it, wouldn't even realize it's there. And they still went to that point to where they did it and put it on it.
Oh yeah.
Like the point that
They also recorded a lot of. They taped a lot of stuff in Elvish that they ended up never using. Right?
they pretty much they actually
They
hired
did the film, I think, in every elf spoke in Elvish just in case they wanted to use it.
They actually hired. There was I think 3 people that actually you can't really have a degree in it, but they excelled so much in actually knowing the language that they were actually brought in to write the scripts of those parts, and not just Elvish but also Dwarvish, the black speech and stuff like that. But I mean, even the armor. King Theoden's armor from Two Towers, which is the King of Rohan, his armor was steel forged, and everything was it's a real set of real armor that could really be used. I'm sure. But everything, if you watch that, is even though some of the armor itself is plastic or some form of a bland, something that's mass produced, but it's still. They still, even though it's mass-produced, all of it was put with, a love and care of it. All the ring mail and chain mail was made by 2 or 3 guys. Every single link was handcrafted by them. It was plastic, but they each all they did every day was just plastic rings, glue it together, glue it together, glue it together, glue it together. Every single piece you see someone wearing. I think it was however many million pieces of chainmail was made.
Yeah.
And just watch that just to see how meticulous. But, I mean, you can tell that's why I view it as a piece of art. Just because of just how much love and just even for things that's never seen is put on there and focused on.
Yeah.
Hang on just a second. All right, continue.
You can kind of see the question take shape even when you go into a store that sells that sells several things, including video games, like a Walmart or a Kmart. I'm trying to think of others. Toys R Us. You could kind of see like the ages progress, and then like the age groups progress for toys. And usually, video games are situated somewhere between what the kids will be doing and what the electronics and adults are supposed to be doing. And they kind of like don't seem to know where it should go, because I mean, we all know the numbers, right? The biggest game buyers on console are adults, right? Mid-30s. Not kids. So it almost seems like that question is there even for the department stores. Like, how do we classify this? Because it's a toy, because it's for pastime. But are all the adults playing toys? Why are adults so immersed? Is it just out of habit that we grew up with video games? Because I mean, if it was anything less than art, we'd be done.
Well, it's not even that. I mean, you can go up to any probably you could poll 100 people at Walmart and ask them, just random people, and ask them, how do you view video games? Do you view them as an art form? Do you view them as just something that ties time? And do you view them as juvenile? And you would probably get a lot more people that view it as juvenile and that just don't understand it.
Right. And I think that's where we are right now.
Yeah.
Like, we're in that transition where those kids from yesteryear are becoming adults, you know, and those that were not involved in video games just don't get it and still remember Super Mario Brothers and the plumber who jumped around and had these funny sound effects, and that it was just a toy to pass the time.
And some of
Or
them
they see their kids with a Nintendo DS and say, yeah, no, it's a toy because I just give it to my kids and just distract them because I'm driving and I don't want them saying, are we there yet?
Well, but some people, that's how, or even regardless of how many decades have passed over video games, they still view it as that's what it is.
Yeah.
They don't view it more as it's Mario. But even then, back in the past, you got games like Final Fantasy and a lot of games that were super in-depth, that had a lot of story and things to convey. And in my opinion, even at that time, even though we didn't recognize it at the point, because honestly we weren't mature enough to understand it, but it was a form of art.
Yeah.
Well, and I think too with like my age group and like a little bit younger, like the early teens and 20s, it's the geekish chic here recently also. So you have a lot more of, especially like we've talked about before, there's a lot more girls that play video games. And whether it's, I think a lot of it is partially games have more story. I know that girls, that's usually, at least for me, that's a very important part when I play games. Like, does it have a good, engaging story for me to follow?
We just had that
and
discussion.
again, like I said, the geek is chic, especially like we've seen when WoW was getting big. A lot of guys, their girlfriends started playing, just whether they were keeping an eye on them or whether they were genuinely interested. It's usually 50-50. But
yeah, we just had that conversation at the game store, but also because of WoW, some of them would actually join it just to say, "Oh, I want to join in and help you out," and then actually they ended up becoming more of a hardcore gamer and enjoying it more than the guy did. But also what you said about having an engaging storyline, it could be even if the gameplay's horrible, if it could be the most amazing game ever, but if it doesn't have a really good storyline, it's not worth it.
Like Destiny.
You know, I'm really good at avoiding spoilers and even synopsis of like what a synopsis of what the
I was just like,
of what a game should be. And so one of those games was The Wolf Among Us, and I completely avoided what that game is about. I just knew it was a Telltale game. I liked the season 1 of Walking Dead. I don't want to know anymore. I'm getting it, but only when the disc comes out because I don't want to have to wait from episode to episode, and that's just my time. Now, this sounds unrelated, but it's totally related. I had like this point where, like, when I sit on my couch, I'm about to play a video game. My wife just gets up and walks away. All right, he's going to play his games. I'm gone. And there was this one point where, like, I sat down. We were watching something together, and I said to myself, I want to play a video game, but then she's going to get up and she's going to go away. And it made me a little sad because I had to choose between the two, and I kind of still wanted to hang out with her. And it kind of came out, we're married, we're honest, so I was like, I wish you were a gamer so that I could share in that joy with you and not have to lose you when I choose that I want to play the game. And I guess it sunk in because, like, the next day, she was like, "Hey, let's play WWE game together." And she knew that I love that, and then I got excited, not even thinking about that it came from me saying that. And I was like, "Yeah, I'll show you how to play it," And I showed it to her, and she learned it really quick. And she was great. She was even kicking my ass at one point. After a few hours, we created a tag team, and we did have that fun. I then, a week had passed, so it was just like to please me for that statement. And then a week had passed, and we were not getting together. The Wolf Among Us came, and I was about to put it in, and then I said, Telltale is more about the narrative. It's more like just if somebody else was observing, they'd just be watching the show, basically. And I went up to her room, and I said, "Look, I'm about to play a video game." I was like, "But I want you to come with me and just watch. I never ask you to watch. I'm not one of those guys, but the game is basically like a point and click. It tells a story. It's a show. You could come watch the show, and if you don't like it, walk away. But if you like it, maybe that's something that we can enjoy together. And I'll play my game, but you'll get to see the show."
Yeah.
Okay. So we sat down. We played The Wolf Among Us. If you've never played The Wolf Among Us and you're like me and you're avoiding what the story is about, fast forward. I didn't know that it had anything to do with fantasy characters and fairy tales. I had no clue that I was playing the big bad wolf. It took actually a very long time for me to realize that Big B Wolf was Big Bad Wolf. I thought that was really freaking clever. There were a lot of things like that they were, a lot of things like that happened. And Jess was hooked. She watched the whole freaking thing. She just sat there and she was like, "Oh, that was awesome." And then that amazing, amazing ending to the first episode. It's like the only reason I'm not continuing to play is because when I'm finally ready to play, it's bedtime for her. And I know I don't want her to miss the second episode, and she probably won't want to either. So I just wait. But things like that, tell me that's not freaking art. Because I popped that in, and we looked at that, and that was beyond what's on television. There's... I was actually I enjoy fairy tales and any kind of twists on anything like that. What's the name of that book? Wicked or something like that?
It's a play.
The one that's a play.
Right.
Yeah.
I didn't see the play. I read the book, but stuff like that. Any twists like that, I love it. And so when Once Upon a Time that TV show was announced, right away I was like, I got to see that. I want to see what they're going to do. I want to see how they're going to play on that and make it modern. And I watched it, and it sucked. Like the first 2 episodes was horrible for me. And I was like, "Oh man, this is so not right." Maybe it got better later, but those first 2 episodes were just like, "This is not for me." We shut it off. We both didn't want to watch it anymore.
Christina and I are still watching it.
Oh well, I'm sure that it gets better after time. A lot of shows are like
we
that,
liked the first episodes. We thought it was good.
Well, we didn't. But when we put on The Wolf Among Us, hooked instantly. Once we saw how clever it was and how they were introducing characters and how they created this world, and I love that whole feeling of when you go into a world, it's so unique, it's so creative that you're actually confused for the first 5 minutes, and you need to get acclimated to what's going on, and then once you do, you're like, "Oh, this is pretty freaking amazing." You ever seen the movie Children of Men? It's kind of like the same concept. They start out with the newscast and they say the oldest. What was it? I forget. The youngest person, and everybody was crazy. What the fuck is going on? Why do they care about the youngest person on earth?
Right.
One of those. And The Wolf Among Us was one of those. And that is definitely that is beyond anything I've experienced for a while. At least artistically, it definitely has artistic merit. And on that note, put a bow on it.
Put a bow on it.
That's a wrap.
That's a wrap. All right.
Put a bow on
Well,
it.
guys, thanks for joining us. Remember, the discussion doesn't end with a 2-hour video that we're going to split into 2 parts. We would definitely, especially for a topic such as this, we would love to hear from you, see what you think. Please post in the comment space below. Let us know what you think. And if you have any ideas for other topics you'd like for us to discuss, definitely let us know that as well. We look forward to seeing you next week. And with that,
put a bow on it. Later, guys.